so let's get started on our pattern. Now, first what I want you to do is start off with your basic bodysuit pattern. Go ahead and get the basic bodysuit pattern that you drafted. I have a tutorial on how to create this basic bodysuit pattern from a bodice block, so I'll make sure I leave the link in the description bar below. And go ahead and take that basic bodysuit and trace it on a new piece of pattern paper, because you will be making adjustments for this bodysuit pattern. So you don't want to mess up your original pattern. You want to just trace that original, because I pretty much created the tutorial to where it's a basic bodysuit block. It's almost like a bodice block. So go ahead and just trace that onto a new piece of pattern paper. You can trace both the front and the back, and make sure you give yourself some room in between both of the patterns, because you will be making adjustments on both of the patterns. So you want to give both patterns a little bit of room to work with. Alright, so the first thing that we will be doing to adjust our pattern for our off the shoulder top, we're going to be adjusting the shoulder. Alright, so on that shoulder line where the shoulder and the armhole meet on both the front and the back, I want you to go up 1 inch on that shoulder line. Measure out 1 inch on that shoulder line. Alright, so as you can see here, I measured out 1 inch, and I want to let you know that I will be making all of my adjustments in red. So yeah, just pay attention to all of the red markings, because those will be all of the adjustments. Alright, so now that we have adjusted our shoulder, we're going to now work on our neckline. Now for the front neckline, I want you to go down 1 inch, and from the back neckline, I want you to go down 1.5 inches. So go ahead and make a start at the point of your neckline where the center and the neckline meet, and go down that center front 1 inch and go down that center back 1.5 inches. Alright, so now that we have adjusted our neckline point, now we're going to create our new neckline by connecting our new point from our shoulder and our new point from our neckline, and we're going to create a curve when creating that neckline. Alright, so as you can see, we've created a new neckline. It looks very similar to a boat neckline, so that's pretty much what we've just created. But the way we have created it, we've created to where you can wear it as if you were wearing it on your shoulders, or you can pull it down to wear it off the shoulders, because we'll be making an off the shoulder bodysuit top with this using stretch knit fabric. Now we're going to work on the ease by adjusting, we're going to work on the fit portion of it by adjusting the ease on the pattern in the bust portion, in the waist portion, and also in the hip portion. We're going to be making adjustments in the armhole area here, in the waist area here, and in the pretty much like the hip portion of the bodice pattern here. Alright, so because we are working with a very stretchy knit fabric, now remember this pattern, well, if you followed along with my tutorial, this pattern does not include ease, it does not include seam allowance. It is just the pattern that is fit exactly for your body, because how I created this bodysuit pattern is I created a bodice block first, and then I created the bodysuit pattern using the bodice block. So alright, so making the adjustments as far as the ease, what I want you to do is go in 1 inch on the armhole, 1 inch on the waist, and 1 inch on that hip portion of your bodysuit pattern. And for the back, alright, and for the back I went in 0.5 inches from the armhole, from the waist, and from the hip portion. So on your front, your ease adjustment will be 1 inch, and on the back, your ease adjustment will be 0.5 inches. And all you have to do is just from that armhole point and that side point, go over 1 inch, go in 1 inch from that waist point, from the side, go in 1 inch, and from that hip portion from the side, go in 1 inch. We're not adjusting the center front, we're not adjusting the center back. So make sure you're working on the side, which is where that pattern curves, pretty much the side of the body, not the center front or the center back. Now that we have our ease points plotted and adjusted on our pattern, we're going to now create our new side, also our new curve here, adjust our curve on the bodysuit as well. Alright, so I have created my new armhole, I've created my new side, and I've created my new bodysuit portion. Now I want you to really pay attention to what I did here when I created my new curves. Now as you can see, the old curves and the new curves are not that different. They're still curving the same. The only thing is that you can see where the adjustment was made when creating, pretty much when adjusting, making that adjustment of ease to go in. So as you can see, for instance, with this armhole, the armhole still curves very much the same at the top, but the only adjustment is when you get to that point that was adjusted. And the same goes for the bodysuit portion of the curve. As you can see right here, you can't see it because it's not that noticeable here, but the new curve is pretty much the same in the front. It just came in right here in this area. You just brought that point in. And then for the back here, because the curve is quite different, it's not going to curve exactly how the front did, but for the back, as you can see, it curves the same. It's the same here on that bottom portion of that bodysuit. It curves the exact same. The only time that you see that it's starting to slightly come in is in the pretty much near the point that where you brought that hip portion of that bodysuit. So I really want you to pay attention to the curves and make sure that you don't adjust the curve in the area that it should not be adjusted. So you want to make sure you're only adjusting it in that bust area. You are adjusting it in that waist area, in that hip portion. You're not adjusting your curve here in the bodysuit portion. You're not adjusting it in that bodysuit portion, and you're not adjusting it here in that shoulder, and that top armhole portion. You're just adjusting it in the bust, in the waist, and in the hip portion. Alright, so after removing the pretty much erasing or removing the rest of the portion of the pattern, this is the final results for the pretty much the new pattern. This is how the new pattern looks. The red is still showing the adjustments that was made from the original pattern, and the black right here is of course the portion of the pattern that should still remain because you did not adjust any of that. You didn't adjust the center front and you didn't adjust the waist position, but you did take it in a little bit, but you didn't adjust the waist position, and you didn't adjust that bodysuit portion down here on the bottom. So this is how your pattern should look. Alright, so this is the finished pattern for pretty much like the boat neck pattern. But now we're going to work on the ruffle neckline and the ruffle sleeves that will pretty much add a little pizzazz to this pattern. Alright, so now that we have our pattern complete, we're going to go ahead and work on our sleeve pattern and our neckline pattern, which it is going to be a ruffle pattern. So I do have a video showing you how to create a ruffle pattern. Be sure to go and check out that video, the video that I have already broken down how to create that ruffle pattern. I'm not going to do all that in this video for time purposes. So what I want to do now is show you how to actually get the calculation or get the number that you need to create that radius that you will be using along with that ruffle pattern tutorial. So we're going to be getting the radius for our neckline and then the radius for the armhole. So this is the pattern pretty much of how it fits your body after being sewn, because we have not added the seam allowance yet. This is before the seam allowance is added. So, and the reason why I want to calculate our neckline and our armhole before the seam allowance is added, because we're going to be adding, when we're sewing this together, we're going to be adding that neckline ruffle and that armhole ruffle after the bodysuit has already been constructed. So that means after it has already been sewn on, which meaning it will not have that seam allowance. So what you want to do is you want to measure across your front neckline and then measure across your back neckline, and then that number that you get, you want to multiply it by 2. And the reason why you're multiplying it by 2 is because you have your front and your back, bodysuit pattern here, but remember it's only half of the front and only half of the back. So you want to make sure that you multiply that number that you get after adding that front neckline measurement and that back neckline measurement. Make sure you multiply that by 2 to get your full neckline measurement, because you want to get the radius of your entire neckline, the front all the way across the front and all the way across the back. Like as you can see here, my front and back neckline was 13 inches, and then I multiplied that by 2 and it gave me 26 inches. So 26 is going to be the number that I'm going to find the radius for my ruffle to pretty much create my full neckline ruffle. For the full armhole, you want to measure along that front armhole and then along that back armhole, and then you want to add those two together, and that number will give you your full armhole, and that will be the number that you need to get the radius for your ruffle pattern. So now what I want to do is direct you to my ruffle pattern video. Go ahead and go check that video out to pretty much see how to create your ruffle pattern for this tutorial. And before you get there, I want to give you the links of each ruffle. Alright, so as you can see here, the length of the ruffles, I want you to make sure you mark that down, because you will need the length of your ruffle to to create the actual pattern. So the length of your ruffles will be for your neckline, the length will be 7.5 inches, and for your armhole, it will be 9.5 inches. So now let's go ahead and create our ruffle pattern for our neckline and for our armhole to sew along with this tutorial. So I have my neckline ruffle pattern done, and I have my sleeve ruffle pattern done, and my radius was 4 inches for my neckline and 2.25 inches for my sleeve. And I did a whole, pretty much a full circle, not a half, but a full circle. And what's going to happen is with this pattern here, I'm going to put my fabric on a double fold and line up my center. I'm going to mark this center, and then I'm going to line that center up with the double fold or the regular fold on the fabric and put the pattern on there. You're going to see all this on my next tutorial. Go check out my sew along tutorial. You'll see how I cut out the fabric or whatever, and it's also in the video that I recommended, where I show you how to create an easy way to create the ruffle and the circle skirt pattern in the video link in the description bar below. So that's the video that you definitely want to take reference to, and once you create that pattern, then that will be pretty much it for this actual tutorial. You only need the neckline ruffle, the sleeve ruffle, and you also need your 2 bodice pieces, your 2 bodysuit pieces, your front and your back. Alright, so this is the completed pattern. You want to make sure that you add your seam allowance on your pattern. As you can see here, I've added seam allowance on my side along the bottom portion of my bodysuit, and also on the little flap portion on the bottom of the bodysuit, as well as the shoulder. I added seam allowance. I went up the length of my seam allowance, and I went out the length of my seam allowance, and went down the length of my seam allowance. So you want to make sure that, as you can see here, you add your seam allowance here. You don't add seam allowance here on the center back or the center front, because that will be cut on fold. So don't add seam allowance there. And you also don't want to add seam allowance on the neckline or the armhole, because of the design of the top, it will make it more flattering
when you actually sew on your neckline ruffle, because what I wanted to do, my whole idea for this was to pretty much make it seem as if there was no shoulder line at all, because it's going to be an off the shoulder top. So adding that ruffle, once we sew along that ruffle, is going to cut away some of that there, and then once we sew on our armhole, it's going to cut away some of that there. So it's almost going to be as if there is no shoulder line period, like the shoulder is like pretty much non-existent, and that's the goal for this particular top. So that's why I'm not adding any seam allowance on my neckline or my armhole. Alright you guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. This is the end of the tutorial. Make sure you go check out my sew along video, and I show you how to actually construct this beautiful off the shoulder ruffle bodysuit top.